Surprise, we're live! Haha. Did I catch them with their pants down? Ah, dang it. I tried, but they were too professional. That's a joke for the record.
That was really funny.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, I am hearable. I think I am. I set it up as the same as last time, so I should be hearable. But welcome. This is Your Brand, Your Business. And normally we are following another show and have the loving, adoring crowds that follow Hunter and Loco. So this time, we're going to be talking about contracts with, I think, just ourselves, essentially. I'm Galen Herbstick Cortina, or Chigginators on Twitch, and Ernest and I run the show together. I'm a financial planner. Ernest, you are a...
CPA.
Woo! And?
I do taxes for people? Is that what you wanted? Or did you want me to throw to the wonderful, the gregarious, the just giving of his time, my lawyer friend, Noah Downs?
Oh, that's me. That's weird. I mean, I also want to say that I do contracts for people.
There you go. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Noah. I'm a lawyer, but I'm a cool lawyer.
He is. And in fact, he is my lawyer friend on Twitch and Twitter. It just didn't fit on his nameplate because it's long. So
also, I'm an attorney for Morrison Rothman LLP based out of California. It's the best entertainment law firm, especially in this industry. But I'm biased.
This is attorney advertising.
Thank you.
So anyways, today we wanted to talk about one of the, frankly, most important things in terms of like running your streaming business, which is contracts. There's something that basically none of us ever want to have to deal with unless we're a lawyer. But they're super important because they basically outline and define everything that we do.
In theory, if you think about it, every single thing you do in life is a contract. I mean, even if the laws that you have to follow are a social contract, it's your contract with the government, whereby you will receive protection from the government and by following the laws. So that's your contract there.
Really,
Exactly.
it's
The social contract?
contracts are the friends we made along the way.
That was supposed to be the end.
God, dude.
That was supposed to be the end of this. God, you're killing me here. Anyways, I thought we'd start off first with, and you gave a good start on it, and if you can hear my cat yodeling in the background, I apologize.
Okay.
But Noah, what is, I know, listen, I had to make it fit, Loco. What is a contract?
So a contract is an agreement. It's an agreement between people. It can be verbal. It can be written. It can be written on a napkin. It can be a handshake. You can spit in your hand and shake just like they did in Tom Sawyer. It's basically an agreement between two parties to do something. Every single contract needs an offer for something to happen, acceptance of that offer, and some sort of consideration to both parties. So basically, for example...
Consideration meaning...
I'm getting there. Consideration meaning money or a favor, or something has to change hands. It has to be a benefit to both sides. So, for example, Galen, if I go to you and I say, hey, man, I'm going to mow your lawn, and then I just go out there and do it, we actually don't have a contract because I received nothing for doing it. It was just a favor. However, if I say, hey, Galen, I want to mow your lawn, but it'll cost you $25. First of all, you say, no, isn't your hourly rate a lot more than that? And I'll say yes. But then I'll go off and mow the lawn. You'll pay me $25.
I also would have to agree to it, right? Because I do not have a lawn.
Yeah,
I live in California. I'm not rich enough to afford a lawn. Are you kidding me?
See, I just bought a house, so I'm going to have a lawn very shortly. The problem is it's a moss lawn, so I just need a weed whacker, really.
Fair enough. So you said... two parties or more, presumably, right?
Or more parties.
Two or more parties. An agreement to do something or have something happen.
Right.
For consideration.
That's right.
Okay.
So there has to be value that goes both ways. Most of what we do in our lives are contracts. So remember, it's very simple. There's got to be an offer, acceptance of the offer, and then value going to both parties.
So, Ernest, do you use contracts?
Yes.
That's not a question.
I know. Do you not? Well, I guess let's go to the relevant one.
So the thing about it is, I send engagement
Noah,
letters.
I think you need to provide some service to Ernest here if he's not using contracts.
Hold on. I send engagement letters, which are not technically a contract, but they outline responsibilities. They outline services to be provided, but they don't. Well, let me ask. This is a great question for Noah. They don't hit specific terms of delivery. So, in other words, you will provide me this, and I will do this for you. If they don't deliver, then I can't, charge them money for it, right? So, as an example, let's say it is April 1st, and correct, and it's we have an engagement letter signed, and they're to provide me with tax documents to prepare a tax return,
right?
And we have an agreed upon price in the letter.
Neat.
They never provide me with the stuff.
Then they breached their contract with you.
Right.
So you do have a contract.
Right. But the issue is, am I going to go sue someone for not giving me the stuff to do their taxes?
Oh, it depends on if they paid you or not. You can sue anybody for anything. But it's a matter of whether or not it would be the most efficient use of your time.
Or a good reputable thing to do as well, right?
That's darn tootin'.
Yeah.
So I signed that in because of Galen's comment in chat. I ain't signing nothing.
So I have a question for you, though.
I was here. Hold on. Briefly on that. Loco gave control of this stream to complete amateurs and then is complaining about resolution. I feel like that's not really on me. I could use like a production budget maybe, and then I could really up it, but...
Galen, there is no production budget. They're spending way too much money on their lawyer.
There you go. Nicely done. Ernest, you had a question for us.
So I know what consideration is, but why don't you define what that is?
So consideration is value exchange for both parties, and consideration can take a lot of forms. And if anybody in chat, hey, Loco, I am a potato. But if anybody in chat ever has a question about something that I'm saying, do not hesitate to ask. That's one of the things we're going to go over, is that you want to make sure that you understand your contracts for clarity. Oftentimes there's a lot of legalese, so I kind of slip into it, but I'm happy to explain in further detail. So what consideration is, that's value to both sides. That can take a lot of forms. Most commonly, it takes the form of money, or the dreaded exposure, which is actually valuable consideration. Yeah.
You're ruining Loco and Hunter's show for next week.
I know. And then exposure can be consideration because it is of value to you. It could be, you can have a contract for passing a reference to somebody. It sometimes just intrinsic joy of doing what you're doing can be consideration. You'll have times where you are reading through a contract, and you'll see this weird legalese section where it says, "Now wherefore the parties have affixed their seals, and for this and other good and valuable consideration, the sufficiency and existence of which is hereby acknowledged." It's essentially our way of saying, listen, court, if this contract ends up in court and the question is whether or not there's a contract due to lack of consideration, here's our consideration. The parties acknowledge that there is something here, even if we can't define what it is.
Fair enough. Okay. So then we've talked a bit about what a contract is. I'd like to follow up with two things. One is, when do you most commonly as a streamer interact with contracts?
Oh, wow.
And when should you start considering bringing in an attorney to help you with it?
Well, we do have our first chat question by the Match Fixin said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how screwed am I? And it depends on how good your lawyer is. So, sorry, self-plug. I guess streamers interact with contracts on a daily basis in terms of in the profession. Obviously, if you go out there and you're buying like a Coke or something, that's a contract. But we're not going to include that here because that's too obvious. The most common thing that you interact with every single day is the Twitch terms of service. Whether or not you know that you are, every time you go live, you are, acting under your contract that you've agreed to. A lot of you haven't read your Twitch terms of service.
Raise your hands if you have.
Yeah.
In chat.
Can I get oh, there you go. Okay, cool. So
two me's and then I plead the fifth. Solid.
Listen, I ain't got time for EULAs or terms of service. I just need to be listening to Huey Lewis hip to be a square as soon as possible. Okay?
Yo, you just okay. Do you want to no, actually don't recreate that. That would be horrific. And so a lot of times you're interacting with the Twitch terms of service. That's your most common thing. But for me, what I review most for people are sponsorship contracts with companies that want to somehow be involved in the stream, streamers that hire people to create their emotes. They need to get contracts with those people. They're called independent contractors, because this is kind of a copyright law segue. But if you hire somebody to make your emotes and you don't have a contract with them and they do this wonderful art for you, they own that art until you get a contract with them saying that you own that art. So I've had clients that have built their entire brands on intellectual property that they don't own because they don't have a contract. And that is a problem. That's bad. If you have
Nintendo emotes, you're saying go get a contract from Nintendo.
Hold on, let me see if any of my clients in chat have Nintendo emotes. 1 second.
While you're doing that, let me ask you something. There's a specific phrase you want in that contract, right? No, isn't it? And forgive me, it's a work for hire or something?
So it's a work for hire, an assignment, or a license. Typically, that section, we'll get into those sections you want to make sure in every contract later on, but an independent contractor, you want some sort of work for hire. That means that essentially the contractor created this work under an independent contractor relationship, and therefore they're giving you the rights in it. Useless, they are pretty long. I'm not gonna lie. So that's let's see if I have any emotes that are based on intellectual property.
Sure, let me.
I'm
willing to bet there's got to be one or two.
Yeah, actually, I don't want to call out my client like that, so we're good. I've had several.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So. So that's essentially what consideration is, to kind of go back to the question. And also, where was I, Galen? I completely went off on a copyright tangent.
We were, you were talking about, I'd asked, when do you commonly interact with contracts? And you were talking about one with emotes.
Yeah. So sponsorships, independent contractors, your terms of service. That's your three main ones that I review the most often. And not only review, but also carry out for people. Now, if you are a streamer who works with other streamers, for example, if you have a channel where multiple people work on it, then you're going to have an agreement between those people as well, and that takes the form of a partnership agreement or an operating agreement, something like that. So
theoretically, should Loco have signed a contract with you, since you are getting exposure and she is getting professional legal insights?
I can't answer that question. Because that's attorney-client privilege, and I'm not shitting you.
Well, to take a step back, one thing you hit on kind of implicitly, but I want to underline it, is that the bar for something to meet the benchmark of consideration is very low. Right? Like, it's not hard to have consideration, quote unquote, in a contract.
Right. No, it's very easy. In fact, you could literally just say this contract has sufficient consideration for both parties.
Right. And that's essentially what you kind of alluded to earlier, in that two parties, they could be the only people on Earth and in the known universe who agree that this thing, whatever it is, has value. And everyone else could vehemently disagree. And those two crazy kids are going to go out there and prove the world wrong with this contract.
That's exactly right. So I've seen contracts entered into for stuff that I looked at like, are you kidding me? And then those companies sold for a ton of money. So what's really interesting is that a lot of people think about contracts as purchasing goods or something like that. But the most important part of contracts really is in the intellectual property that's tied up in them, because intellectual property is 80% of the value of your business. So, or your brand is 80% of the value of your business.
Nice.
So thank you. I'm a team player. And so that is why we have a lot of contracts, because you want to make sure that you protect your intellectual property, protect your brand, and then protect your business.
That all makes a lot of sense. So at the end, I'll have some hopefully more entertaining, assuming you can actually like talk about some of those things, hopefully kinds of questions. But we've talked about what a contract is, when you might interact with one. Next question becomes, I'd say, what do you do to educate yourself right off the bat about contracts? And B, when do you start looking for outside help with your contracts?
So here's a primer. And one thing I need to go ahead and stop before I say anything else is that we're about to get into the weeds of some actual, what I would consider good tips and tricks. Everything I'm about to say is for general informational purposes only. I am not currently your lawyer, unless I am. And this is not creating an attorney-client relationship. I'm always happy to talk to people, but all of this is for information only, and it's not specific legal advice. Your situation will always be different. Done. Cool. There's a few things that every single contract needs to have. And so an untrained eye should be looking for these kinds of things. One, you need to make sure that your contracts have clear and express terms. So if it's muddled, if it's a lot of legalese, if you're not sure how much you're getting paid when the services or goods are due, that kind of thing, then you need a new contract because it doesn't have clear terms and it doesn't have express terms. So if you're just looking at your contract and you're getting very confused, then that's a red flag. A contract should always answer all what-if questions you might have. What if, the sky falls tomorrow? What happens? Do I have to finish this? Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the answer is no. What if we go bankrupt before we complete this contract? Well, are the services still due? There's a lot of what-if questions. What if you produce emotes for me and I don't like them? Can I ask for edits? How many edits do I get? That kind of thing. And so if you have what-if questions that are not answered, up to a certain point, you can get super annoying like 5-year-old child with them if you want. But general broad what-if questions should all be answered. Also, everybody needs to agree on what the definitions of terms are. Now, let me explain what that means. So, for example, if you have the term net revenue, what does that mean? You know that the term net means that it is the amount after something is taken out, but you don't know what is taken out beforehand. You don't know how net revenue is defined. So revenue itself could have a lot of definitions. So everyone needs to understand what the definitions are. And in fact, a lot of contracts you'll see will have a definition section. If your contract does not have a definition section, go through and make sure that all terms are defined. You can often see them in bold and or highlights or in quotation marks. And then finally, this one sounds stupid, but it's honest to God. Make sure that all the parties to the contract are clearly identified. For example, Galen, you have Buff Your Finances. That is your business. Shout out to your business. Any contract with you needs to know if they're contracting Galen or if they're contracting Buff Your Finances, the business. That's very different because you are not your business. If there's more than one party, if there's a third party or something like that, then you need to know who that is and whether or not they're a beneficiary or they have a duty there too. That was a lot that I just threw you guys.
No, well, and on that last point specifically, I'd say, whether it's in this example, Buff Your Finances or Galen, really that's up to who has to perform, right? Because Galen could have support staff on as part of Buff Your Finances. He could have another planner on staff. And, that could be the person that the customer interacts with, but they may not know that because the contract says Galen. Mm-hmm. And so they may feel that they aren't getting what they signed for, right? To that point, exactly. Like, who are you dealing with and why, and how will that work?
Yeah. And can you phrase that in a different way?
So essentially, see, there's the contract side of it, and part of me is wearing like my own business operations side of it. Right. Because you're like doing customer relations and you're saying like, hey, I'll be the person handling this. But say you just sign a contract with someone and it expressly says Galen is the party, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'm working for Galen and all of a sudden it's Ernest reaching out to this person on behalf of Buff Your Finances and trying to figure out what's going on and perform the financial consulting services. Is that considered? Is the contract still on proper terms, I suppose?
So yeah, what you would become in that situation is what we call an agent of the company, or you are holding yourself out to be an agent of the company. And so a lot of contracts refer to authorized agents of the company. So you would be included in there as a representative of Buff Your Finances. Now, if you are not an authorized agent, then we could get into a ton of legal issues for both sides.
I hated this part of my business law class.
I loved it.
I hated this part of my business law class.
But TLDR, it is TLDR. Make sure you identify who your agents are and that nobody is being squirrely on you.
You didn't like the section on voidable versus void?
Oh God. Stop.
That was awesome. I loved it.
I literally just won a case in the Virginia Supreme Court over voidable versus void.
Really? Got ran all the way up to the Supreme Court also.
Yeah.
I picked up your humble brag, bud. Nice done.
Well done. Yeah. So, okay, we've talked about some common things to look out for in contracts, some common pitfalls. Where would someone go if they were looking to help them figure out some of the basics? Maybe they don't feel like they're at the point right now where they can afford an attorney.
Well, let me put it this way. It's going to be one of the most self-serving things I say. Oh, thanks, Wes. This is going to be one of the most self-serving things I say all day, and that is that if you can't afford an attorney, you might not be able to afford doing business. And that's because there's a lot of things that can go wrong with contracts, and it's going to cost you a lot less to pay me for a couple of hours to review it for you, make sure you get it right, and that you're not missing something, rather than come to me, even 2 days down the line after you've signed it and it doesn't say what you think it says, and it's cost you $10,000. That being said, not everybody has that ability, but always reach out to a lawyer, whether it's myself, whether it's Joel, whether it's someone else. Reach out and see what your options are. Don't just assume you can afford them. Now, following up on that, I would say, if you cannot afford an attorney, you just know you can't, you're at the very start and you have no resources, then do not use LegalZoom. Do not use Rocket Lawyer.
But they've got rockets.
Galen, I will sign off of this call right now.
That would definitely mess up even more with the aspect ratios on our videos.
I know it would. So do not use any of those online digital services because they are terrible. And I don't care if somebody clips this and sends it to them. Sue me. They are not good. They will give you poor advice. You will regret it.
And specifically why I think you're saying they're bad is because it's boilerplate tax advice on things. You should do this.
Legal
this
advice.
Is how you do this. Right. They're boilerplate responses for things that are very specific in nature. And also, I don't know, but I'm willing to bet LegalZoom doesn't understand the industry you're working on.
Yeah.
And specifically this industry.
Right. I can't tell you the number of appearance contracts I get for my clients who are receiving sponsorships, where it is written as if it's a film or TV deal, and it just doesn't work. This is an industry where you build your own channel, you build your own brand, you build your own business. And sorry, I can't help myself.
No, it's good. But what you just said earlier that 80% of the IP is your business. That's where all of the value is, right?
Right.
LegalZoom was built for more traditional businesses where that is not true, right? Where it's kind of the goods for money type of contracts. I will deliver you 18 pallets of bricks. They'll be delivered on the first of every month. You'll build houses, and here's money, right? Those kind of word
brick and mortars
classes. Yeah.
The LegalZoom, you can say that LegalZoom was built for that, but to be quite honest, LegalZoom was built so that the people who built LegalZoom can make money. They don't care about you. Now, if you sue LegalZoom, no attorney is going to lose their bar license. If I mess up, there's a real consequence. If LegalZoom messes up, there's no consequence. So you signed away your rights because you didn't read the contract.
So we've heard where not to look.
Yeah. So where do you look if you need help and you can't afford a lawyer? You should. There's a lot of self-help stuff out there. There's a lot of good posts by myself and my colleagues on Reddit, for example, giving some good general advice, things to look out for. If you go to r/game dev, you'll see a lot of AMAs by the partner at my firm, Ryan Morrison, and myself. There's a lot of good articles out there from actual lawyers that give you some advice, but keep in mind those are written so that you will be enticed to hire those lawyers. So, but it's a good start. Use common sense, I think, is one of the biggest things. Is when you're reviewing contracts, if something feels wrong, it is wrong. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification. Don't be afraid to request changes. A lot of times, if a party won't change a contract, then you shouldn't sign that contract. If it's set in stone, don't sign it. You are your best advocate in those situations, and so don't be afraid to ask for that clarification or request those changes, because that's your right, and you don't have to sign that contract.
So if a contract has a clause that I am interested in changing or amending in some way, how do I go about doing that?
So if a contract has a clause, say for example it says, Galen, by broadcasting on StreamerSquare can use your likeness in perpetuity forever and sell it for everything. You would probably want that changed at some point, and you would say, hello, StreamerSquare lawyer. I need this changed, and that's it. Say, this is why I want it changed. Please change it to this. Lawyers are more likely to accept changes to their contracts if you suggest a revision. If you just send me something that has a comment that says, change this, I'm not going to do it.
Change it to what?
Yeah, change it to what? Give me some suggested language, something like that. I received a contract. Okay, I will call somebody else for this. I'll subtweet right now. I sent out a contract about 2 months ago and received it back, and it was full of red lines, but the red line was just comments saying, our client won't agree to this. Our client won't agree to this. Our client won't agree to this. And I said, okay, well, I guess we're not going to sign you then. Eventually cooler heads prevailed. But if you suggest revisions, they're more likely to get accepted. So,
because theoretically, the reason that you're signing a contract is because you want to work together, and that contract is helping you define what it means to work together and how you will work together and things like that. So they're not necessarily antagonistic, right? Even negotiations around a contract aren't necessarily antagonistic. It's right. You trying to find a way to work with someone and have it well defined and have it be useful to both of you.
Right, exactly. We got a good question in chat from Wes. Would it be normal just to request a clarification in a contract? Say I am not a lawyer, and I read a contract and I go, I don't know what that technically means. Could you add a parenthetical layman's explanation? You can always request that. But the lawyer on the other side has an ethical duty to remind you that they are not your lawyer and they can't give you legal advice. So I find myself in this situation a lot when I send a contract to someone who doesn't have a lawyer. They say, can you tell me what this means? I can up to a certain point, up until the point where I'm giving them legal advice, which in some cases can be as easy as explaining what it means. So I would be careful with that. Sometimes you can get a parenthetical layman's explanation, but it is not often the case. One thing you might be able to do is to take those terms and look up similar terms and see if you can find an explanation like that.
Okay, interesting. Because I know one of the things I have to be very careful about in my business is not straying into the territory of giving someone legal advice, which is especially when it comes to estate planning, right? That can be a very fine line between what I can say about estate planning and what needs to go to a lawyer. But often what I was told is I can give. Actually, I was told this in my business law class. I can give textbook definitions of things like what is a trust, but I cannot generally
Say why you want a trust versus a will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting to hear too, from your side of it, what kinds of things would be coming close to that line for you of providing a service that you are not contracted to provide.
Right.
So you've mentioned some things that you can do to do your own due diligence on a contract. You mentioned that if you can't afford a lawyer to go over your basics, you might not be able to afford to be in business.
I'll do you one better.
Okay.
I've got some recommendations for things that everyone should look at when they're looking at a contract. So, preface this. This is before you go to a lawyer, take a look at this. But if you can't go to a lawyer, then take a look at this anyways. One, make sure you know how you can get out of the contract. If it says that you can terminate the contract at any time with 30 days written notice, cool. If it says you can only terminate the contract if the other side breaches it, not as cool. If it says the other side can terminate the contract, but you cannot, that's real bad.
That's scary. That's like a gym contract at that point.
Very close to slavery. So, what the renewal terms are for a contract. I've had this happen a few times with my clients where they didn't realize that a contract was set to renew 90 days before it expired. Mm-hmm. Say, for example, I have a contract. What's today? It is. Okay, so 6th. I have a contract that's set to expire around August 6th, which is 3 months from now, give or take 90 days, something. And I wait 2 months, and about a month out from the expiration, I say, you know what? I don't want to do this contract anymore. Too bad. I'm 2 months past the renewal date. You also need to know what an assignment is, what the assignment provisions are. So an assignment happens when somebody under the contract can give their responsibility to someone else. So say I have been contracted to provide, here you go. Say you give me $10, Galen, and I eat a durian fruit to raise money for St. Jude. I can then, in theory, if I have a good assignment provision, give someone else that responsibility, that durian fruit, because it's terrible.
Hey Ernest, what are you up to? How do you feel about durian?
I will do that for $20.
Good. See, St. Jude, it's for the kids. But yeah, so assignment means that you can basically assign your responsibility under it. You can sell your right to receive or your duty or subcontracting rights. And also one thing that's important to know is how do you amend a contract? That's very simple. How do you change the terms if the terms aren't acceptable to both sides? Also know what the governing law and jurisdiction of your contract is, because, for example, if I'm entering into a contract with Galen is on the other side of the country from me. I need to know where I can sue him if he breaks that contract.
Literally, by the way, this isn't theoretical. He's on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast.
Yeah. So if the contract says that, for example, I can sue Galen in Seattle, then I have to go to Seattle to sue Galen. And that might be cost prohibitive. But now if it says that I can sue him at my hometown here in sunny Richmond, Virginia, I live in Richmond, Virginia, then Galen has to come out here to defend it, and that's not very good for him.
Yeah, and that's a big issue with the industry being so spread out, because you could be signing a contract with a Canadian company.
Yeah.
Right, and so, or you could have a
French company.
Yeah, I was just thinking Ubisoft, right? Like they're primarily headquartered in France, correct?
Yeah, I think their offices are up there. They've got like a Montreal, at least dev team or something like that. But
yeah. I think this is a good time, since Wes put the links in the chat, to shout out that Galen and I are both raising money for St. Jude this month, by the way. This is my first live appearance for St. Jude, and Galen's already had another one himself. So if you want to support the kids, go to Tiltify, click those links. There's incentives for donating. Galen's are much worse than mine. And you can make him eat weird fruits and weird candies and stuff that's painful. And if you want, on May 25th, I'll be streaming live with my friend McLaffy Taffy, and you can have me have lots of horrible hot sauce.
There you go.
So go check this out. It's for the kids. We're going to beat cancer, screw cancer. All right, anyways.
I thought Wes had a really interesting question.
I'll tee you up, Noah. So Wes follows up with, well, what dictates where the contract's jurisdiction is?
Yeah, so the contract does.
Yeah, usually it'll say this contract. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal. And I am seeing what I have seen before. But usually contracts say this contract is governed by the laws of, and it'll name the jurisdiction explicitly.
So one of the common things you'll see is something like to the effect of this contract is governed by the laws of the state of California. Both parties subject themselves to the exclusive and personal jurisdiction of the courts found in and around Los Angeles County, California, and all choice of law, and expressly ignore all choice of law except for the laws of California.
And then follow up is it's has nothing to do with either the parties or the lawyers. It's just wherever it's chosen. And
exactly. Oftentimes you'll have people that choose a neutral party. For example, if you got somebody in Seattle and somebody in California, they might pick Oregon. Also, you can have venue shopping. So the Ninth Circuit, which is the California West Coast Circuit, is very favorable to the intellectual property scene. So you'll see a lot of contracts there. Now, if it doesn't say anything, it's anyone's game. And oftentimes that's the case where you'll find there's a race to the courthouse.
Right.
So one party will say, oh, no, I messed up. Crap, I need to sue them here so that they can't sue me there. And they sue for something we call declaratory judgment, which is basically saying we either asking the court to say, is this right or wrong? And then there's no damages or anything from that.
If you, as I say, you definitely would. I remember that location being really a big deal in one of the employers that I worked for had a non-compete that everyone knew probably wouldn't stand up in court, but also wasn't worth suing them over because of the loss to the person suing, essentially. Yeah. But they were very careful to say that none of this would be arbitrated in California because California is, from everything I understand, really not friendly to non-compete agreements.
Funny enough, neither is Virginia.
Okay, there you go.
Or New York.
So I got it. So we've hit a few of the things to look at when you're doing a self-review of a contract. You hit termination, so who can term and when and the timeline for that. You hit on the timeline of contract, so how long does it last, who can renew it. You hit on assignment, so how the rights of the contract can be assigned. What else you got for us in terms of self-review?
Let me see. I have some notes here because I did some prep for this thing.
Well, what a legend.
Yeah, right.
It's more than I did.
Oh, something that's interesting. You want to know the notice provision. So you need to know where, if there's a breach of the contract, say somebody doesn't do something, or if you need to make an amendment, or you want to terminate, or something like that, you need to know where to tell the other party that.
The standard language is drag them on Twitter, right?
Yeah, it's subtweet, man. Just like slide into their DMs and tell them what a screwball they are. No, but so typically one of the things that is different in our industry is that we will have a lot of contracts where you will need to specify that notice via email is okay, because typically it's been noticed via courier, or not pigeon, but just courier. We have come a little bit up, but notice via snail mail, notice via certified mail, something like that. So you will always want to have the emails. Also pay attention and write that down. For example, I have a client who they wanted to terminate a contract, and they sent the email of termination, because we've gotten that provision in there, to the wrong email address. They sent it to their contact, not the notice email, which was annoying. So we got that resolved. It was just caused a headache because the company didn't exactly want to play ball.
Yep.
So I have a question for you, Noah.
Uh-oh.
It's this. So because of the industry being small and a lot of people signing deals with similar companies or the same company, do you advocate talking to a friend who maybe has already signed a contract with that deal and asking them, hey, do you mind if I see your contract, and lining them up just to see, how yours, because that can lead to some, hurt feelings, right? If the contracts aren't as favorable, and it could be.
I would, so on the one hand, it's good that sharing of information in this industry is always a good thing. We, as an industry, can go a long way by making sure we all have a shared rising level of knowledge. That said, you will often enter into a contract where you are not allowed to disclose the terms of that contract. That'll fall under the confidential information section, where if you sign a contract that does not have a confidential information section, be very careful, because it's probably a scam of some sort. Make sure that you abide by that term, but also you don't want to induce somebody to reveal information they can't reveal. Almost every contract will have some term in it that says that the parties won't talk about the terms of that contract except with their lawyer or their accountant. So sorry, Caitlin. It would be a good idea if we could all share that information, but unfortunately we can't. And also, you're right, it could lead to some hurt feelings.
Gotcha. Okay. So then, now I'm going to just say it. This happens though, right? Unfortunately then?
Yeah. Oh yeah. People share all the time, and people get sued all the time. So that's why I have a job. So people do share that kind of stuff all the time, and it does help, but at the same time, it does lead to hurt feelings. It does lead to broken contracts, and it does lead to people losing their contracts unintentionally.
And that's what I wanted to hit on, was that, someone could say, but come on, everybody does it, right?
Yeah.
And to that point, it could end up with you losing that contract, and then you aren't as nearly as marketable as before because word gets around.
Right, and it's also another good reason to reach out to a lawyer that's familiar with the industry. Okay, you guys ready for some tea? I'm about to pour it. I have. Okay, girl. Okay. I have one person who has written a bunch of contracts that I have reviewed. I represent a bunch of management agencies that actually or help streamers themselves, but they send me the contracts to review. So this one lawyer wrote a contract and sent it to effectively 23 streamers through their managers. And I represented all of them in one form or fashion, either through the manager or directly. And so the first time I reached out to this attorney and I said, hey, I need these provisions changed. And he said, no problem. Got it changed. Then about 10 minutes later, I sent him another one and said, hey, I need these provisions changed. He's like, okay. So about 20 contracts into the 23, he gets real mad at me and says, you can't use these contracts against each other. You just can't do that. That's not allowed. I'm like, it's totally allowed. You should have just sent out a good contract in the first place. Needless to say, I knew what everyone else was getting, and I was able to get them all the same favorable terms because I work the industry, and I know what to look for. And that lawyer hates my guts now, but he still has to send my clients contracts.
But God damn it, does he straight respect you?
He does. So he's a good guy. But we talked about it recently, and we are on good terms.
So
Nice.
One thing then, and I'm going to make sure, I know you're going to hit it, Noah, but the thing that you need to look out for in contracts too is the payout terms, right? When are they going to pay you? How they're going to pay you?
You need to know if you're going to pay net 15 or net 90, because that helps you budget. That's more of a personal thing. And if you don't check that, the company's not going to help you with it. Now, if you are supposed to be paid net 30, hold on, back up. Net means 30 days later. Okay.
From the completion of your end of the deal.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're supposed to be paid net 30 and then it gets to be 60 days past that date, then you have some rights and you might be able to charge interest and you might be able to sue somebody, which is so much fun.
And so much money.
For me, it's fun. It's not fun for you. But you might have the ability to sue somebody, send them a nastygram or something. That said, if you agree to net 90, then you got to wait 90 days before you can get upset. So that's one of the first things I'll change about a contract. If it says net 45, I'll change it to net 30. If it says net 30, I'll usually change it to net 15. Not expecting it to stick every time, but just to let the other side know that we're paying attention to it, because then they're aware of what their own terms are.
Paying attention, and frankly, if they don't agree to that, that might make them more amenable to something, agreeing to something favorable in the future. We didn't do this one thing they asked. We're more likely to then come around on something else if we do, in fact, want to work together.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people think that attorneys have relationships where we hate each other, but actually it's a community. Like, we have relationships with each other. We're friends. We often work across from each other, and we know each other's ticks and tacks. And we figure out, we know how to work together, because we're always going to end up working together. This is a very small industry. And so we all just kind of need to get along.
Not to mention, it's just helpful to have your lawyers be the ones arguing, so that you're not arguing with the person you're trying to work with.
Right.
Because if you have them as middlemen doing that, that's just prudent business. No one's going to be, well, not no one, but someone who's good at what they do and used to being in the business probably won't be holding the fact that you have a lawyer who is active in your defense or proactive for you. They're going to be like, okay, this person actually knows what they're doing. Because that's actually, like, I have clients who have, when they've been in the process of signing me, have said, hey, sorry, I've got a lawyer. I'm going to have him or her review this. It might take a little bit to sign. And I'm sitting there like, good. Thank goodness, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm glad that you do, because that tells me that you're, like, at least a little more aware about how you should be running your business. Exactly.
Anyone who's going to have an issue with you having an attorney probably isn't worth working with.
Yeah. So two more words of advice here. One, if someone either A, doesn't want you to have an attorney, or they give you something when you're on site ready to perform, don't sign it at all. Don't sign it. I had a client that showed up to an event that was put on in New York, and the attorney for the other company handed them a contract on set, like 5 minutes before they were supposed to go live, said, sign this. When they knew that we had requested that beforehand. We requested it 30 days beforehand, and they never gave it to us. And so my client called me and said, I'm freaking out. I'm about to go on set. I don't know what to do. And I said, don't sign it. Go on set. Go live. They don't have your permission to use your likeness until you sign it to them. So the company kind of screwed themselves a little bit, gave us a lot of leverage. And you can argue there was an implied license or something like that, but it worked out in our favor. And my client didn't feel bullied in signing that. The other piece of advice is that contracts save friendships. Hands down. If you and your buddy are, creating some sort of wonderful game, or something like that, if you're hiring an artist that's a friend, or, such and such, contract with that person, because then there's no undefined terms. There's nothing left out in the open. Everything is laid out, and you can say, well, this is what's in the contract, so we need to do that. Instead of saying, well, you said you were going to do this, or I thought you were going to do this, or that's really not enough money. You should give me more money. Because what's in the contract will save your friendship.
And as a quick aside, if you're partnering with a friend or family member or whomever, and you don't have a contract, I know for a fact in a lot of jurisdictions, that defaults to a 50-50 partnership, where partner one or partner two can enter into a contract on behalf of the other partners, on behalf of the other partner. And so, you may want to say, like, look, you're going to handle the admin side, and I want you in charge of signing everything, or it requires both partners to sign. You can get in a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. Forget about saving your friendship. You could be exposed to all sorts of liability on the other side of it by not having that in place.
Yeah. You speak the truth, Ernest. That's the wisest thing you've said all day.
No.
Hey, by the way, you got some sort of Starbucks cup in the background.
Dude, has that been in frame?
Oh no!
Oh no! I can't believe that I left this Starbucks cup in frame the whole time.
I didn't even watch the show, and I saw that all over Twitter today.
That's unbelievable.
Good.
I'm open to a Starbucks sponsorship, even though they burn the beans.
They do.
All right, so we're getting close to an hour. Any other general questions in chat? Feel free to ask them now. And then, Galen, I see you got something.
While I just saw this is sorry. While people are writing in questions, Noah, what are some of the worst things that you've seen in contracts that you can tell us about?
I had a contract that I reviewed last week where a company that is new to the space, it's a big company that everybody loves. So I
can't
won't
believe you're dragging Galen right now with Buff Your
I
Finance.
can't help it. I
I'm
mean,
kidding.
it's that everybody loves.
Kidding, that's a joke.
So it's a big company that everybody loves was hiring one of my clients to do an event on Twitch. It's an activation that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks. And their contract said that they have the right to use my client's likeness in perpetuity, so forever. They're allowed to use any portion of their stream necessary, even unrelated to the activation, in order to promote the activation. And that they can have my client modify, add, whatever they want. So basically, they owned my client's brand if my client had signed that. And I know people that signed that, just straight up signed it. And so I doubt the company will ever do anything like that, but they have the right to if they want.
That was, what was it? The whole, oh my God, internet throttling thing. But why am I blanking on the name?
Things.
The internet fucking restricting the internet bills that just recently passed that I'm blanking on. Anyways, we want the ability to do this. We never will, but we want the ability to do it. But don't worry, we ever will. Net neutrality. There we go.
There you go.
But we never will, but we want the ability to. But I swear, we never will. Like, do you actually trust someone? Do you trust someone who does that? No, of course not.
No.
And
Well, it's not even if I trust them. It doesn't. If I'm signing this with a company, that person I trust or the people I trust could eventually
be gone.
rotate out.
Yeah.
And then that company has the rights to it still.
Mm-hmm.
You have no idea how many times I talked to one of my management clients and like, oh, I know so-and-so at this company. It's fine. And that person's gone 2 months later.
What if they get hit by a bus or struck by lightning?
Or just
Heaven
win the
forbid.
lottery and retire. Fuck. Like, right? Like, not even like bad.
Everyone stop. I just want you to point this out in perpetuity. This is the exact thing I'm talking about. We talked about two examples, and I went to the negative connotation of someone dying, and Galen went to the positive connotation of someone winning the lottery.
Yeah.
If that doesn't sum up who we are, nothing will.
Yeah, I'm not even going to tell you what I was thinking. So there is one question in chat from Wes. Any hot tea in that King Richard emote drama? And
No,
the
he's
answer is
asking, can you punch him in the face?
Yeah. The answer, Wes, is unfortunately no. I cannot comment on that due to attorney-client privilege.
Yeah.
So
I have one thing for you, Noah. I know we got to go. Is this? So oftentimes, in my experience with looking at contracts that people are getting or various things from companies, oftentimes it's legal counsel and it's like a 1L interning or something. Hey, send them our boilerplate contract and just see what happens. Is that true? Is it basically just a boilerplate contract that companies have for these things where they don't customize it to the activation or anything like that? And for the most part, companies will work with you, but they're taking the path of least resistance. We need this. Here's a boilerplate contract that may not even apply, and we've got a contract signed, quote unquote.
yeah, no, so, and Wes, to answer your question, I can't answer your question, but you're a good person, don't worry. So if you see boilerplate language or somebody says, oh, this is boilerplate, just sign it, don't read it. You can challenge that boilerplate, and there's actually some case law in certain jurisdictions around the country that say that boilerplate language is not enforceable because it's various reasons, but it's typically because it's not fair to both parties. And so you feel free to challenge that boilerplate language. You don't have to sign it. A lot of companies will have templatized stuff.
Yeah.
You can tell if the template is custom for the industry or not, because it will make sense or not. So if someone comes through and they say, oh yeah, you're going to get 30 products to use on your television show. This is not
really relevant to you.
And to be clear, when we say boilerplate, for those that don't know, we're essentially saying standardized language that is used in all contracts, right? So it may be like, we hire independent contractors. Here's our boilerplate independent contractor language. The payment terms are the same for everyone.
Right.
Maybe we change a few things, but it'll have that confidentiality clause. It'll have the governing jurisdiction and things like that. So, and I've just seen a lot of it where those get sent out, and you can tell it'll say stuff like 30 television shows or other stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
I didn't see. We're at an hour, 59 minutes and 25 seconds, according to the dashboard. I don't see more questions coming in, although there is still time if people want to ask them. But where would you? I guess I'd say, like, if someone is looking to do their first deal with a management company, deal with a sponsor, something like that. Are there people who work with them in those situations?
Yes. I know that I give free short consultations to people who have any questions and stuff like that. Oftentimes it helps just to know that there's someone out there that can help you with stuff. My firm does that as well. And I'd be happy to set up a meeting or a phone call with anyone that has questions about something. I might have to charge you at some point, but I'm happy to make sure that, it's even worth pursuing that avenue.
Most professionals, or a lot of professionals at least, do free initial consults where they want to make sure that they're actually the right person to help you and make sure that you actually need their services back and forth. I know I do. No, it sounds like you do. Ernest, I believe you do, right?
100%. I never charge for an opening consult.
Yep.
And I tend to, I think I'm going to speak to the altruistic nature of everyone in this show today. Most of us give it away for free for the
We will all offer you Noah's time.
We will all offer you Noah's time, and for the most part, we provide a lot of value for the time we give. A lot of times we're very giving of our time. I think I can say that for all of us.
We did just have a question come in, by the way. Button Mash Vixen asks, would a contract be anything in writing? Like I wrote out on PayPal's invoice a blurb? I don't know.
A blurb, I think.
Blurb, oh.
And as a tack on to that question, could you talk real quick about verbal contracts? Because that's kind of part of this.
So verbal contracts suck because you don't have proof of things usually.
Right.
And it's really a he said, she said, really hard to enforce. Contracts can be anything in writing, Button Mash Vixen. I'm just going to call you BMV. Because I could write a contract on a napkin to get Galen's firstborn coming up. And so I would be happy to help you with that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, if you just write something on a PayPal invoice, like for example, if you want to change the terms, if someone sends you a contract and you want to change something, you can't just like write in the margin.
You can't unilaterally change it.
Yeah, you can't unilaterally change a contract. You have to have both sides agree to it, which they can do by initialing or something like that. But if like you sign a contract and then send it back and you've written something in the margin, they don't have to accept it. So,
yep.
Remember, gotta accept it.
So I'm gonna let you put the fear of God or whatever higher power, whatever people believe in, one more time. How much more? So, kind of, if you look at the industry as a whole, the last 5 years ago was Wild West, right?
Right.
And it's become more and more mature.
How much of streaming is illegal?
Well, I wasn't even going to do that. Okay, put a pin in that. That's a fun little tease, right? Like, that's a roundabout.
Sorry, go on. I apologize.
Well, here's my question, Noah. No. My question is this. Are you seeing more and more enforcement actions happening with contracts as the industry has matured?
Yeah, no, definitely. We're seeing people enforcing contracts, entering into contracts. We're seeing a lot of people taking advantage of contracts to screw over streamers because this industry started off wonderful and innocent, and it's quickly becoming cutthroat in the business aspect sometimes. So you need to make sure you have a lawyer friend. You need to make sure that you're protected. And that was totally a self-plug.
Nicely done.
So everyone's got to make sure that they have somebody because people are going to take advantage of you no matter what. To follow up on what Galen was hinting at earlier.
Yes. Is streaming legal?
No, your entire profession's illegal. You're taking other people's copyrighted content and distributing it without a license.
So follow up,
on that fun note.
Who is more crazy? People who've made this their profession or professionals who've hitched their wagons to that profession?
I would definitely say the people who made this their profession because I can go somewhere else, but I would never want to. I love this way too much. So that's funny, Wes. So just one more shout out real quick. You guys are all wonderful. Thank you so much for being here today and listening to the free legal advice. Since it is free legal advice, I would encourage you to go and check out Galen and my Tiltify landing pages for St. Jude, because St. Jude is an incredible organization. This is the Play Live month. The month of May is our fundraising effort. There's a lot of streamers doing it. You'll see a lot of people out there. Our goal is to hit 2.5 million by the end of May. We're well on our way. Galen and I, don't stream that often. He streams a lot more than I do, and so I recommend that you go and
once every couple of weeks.
Yeah, right. Go and check out our Tiltify. Every dollar counts. Really, if either of us get a $1 donation today, that's a victory. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, we absolutely appreciate it. And thank you, Noah, for joining us for this talk. He has given you guys at least, $450 now worth of free advice, an hour of your time plus a bit. So,
yeah, it's a lot.
Consider that. But yeah, so we're going to close it down for now. We are, as you saw, Wes was very helpful with that. We're all on Twitter a little more than is probably good for business. And
good for our mental health.
Especially for our mental health. But this is Your Brand, Your Business. We do this as close to weekly as we can. Tax time gets a little rough, but we do try and get this close to weekly as we can. Next week, we are actually going to be talking about fundraising streaming, specifically in the context of St. Jude. But we're going to have one of the members of the St. Jude Play Live team join us, Noah as well, because he's working on it and has some really helpful insights. But I am Galen Herbstick Cortina. I'm a financial planner who works with streamers, and I am someone who also streams occasionally for fun because it's, interesting to do every once in a while, because I play a lot of video games anyways. Ernest?
I am Ernest Jones. I am a CPA. I work with streamers, broadcaster, game developers, anyone in the industry, and anyone who will pay me money and sign a contract to work on their taxes for tax consulting, tax compliance, or tax representation services. And Ghost from Game of Thrones is in the back of my lawyer friend's background, so I'm going to scream, "Protect Ghost!"
That was great. And I think so my name's Noah Downs. I'm a lawyer, but I'm a cool lawyer. And you can find me on Twitter at MyLawyerFriend. If you ever need any legal help or you think you might, feel free to reach out. I am your friend. My email and my contact information is on my Twitter. And once again, please, St. Jude Play Live. It's a wonderful organization, and the research helps everyone.
You can make me eat Bean Boozled beans. You can make me eat durian candy, Carolina Reaper jerky, and eventually I need to actually set up the thing for it. I have some extra In Mob Lord We Trust shirts, so if he's someone who's ever helped you, all right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks so much.